you're being left. We're recording. Come on in into our lovely Zoom world. Broadcasting live from Liverpool, Germany, and London. It's north and south. Are you south, Rebecca?
Yes.
Yeah, north and south, London, Germany, and Liverpool. Not quite Eurovision, but not far off. I'm just letting a few people come in, and I think we're good to go. So I'm going to just dive in with my intro. Good evening, everyone. I'm Carmel Dickinson. I'm the founder and director of Worthy, a business consultancy to help female and diverse founders start and launch and grow businesses. This is the final part, sad face, of the Life is a Revolution webinar series brought to you by Paradigm Norton. This 4-part webinar series was built with a focus on the key challenges and opportunities facing women in their midlife and beyond, because there's a lot. We hope to help you with the powerful relationship between financial planning and a fulfilling life. In this final discussion tonight, we discuss the important milestone of retirement. If you missed our previous discussions on reinvention, relationships, and revitalization, you can watch them on YouTube. We will send the link following this discussion. But if you've joined us previously, I am so glad you are finding this series beneficial, and welcome back. This series, as I said, is brought to you by Paradigm Norton. As an employee-owned B Corp certified firm, they are committed to championing financial clarity, and empowerment for women. They integrate ethical and sustainable business practices with expert wealth management. They are dedicated to helping clients achieve financial well-being. Under the leadership of the new CEO, Philippa Han, who you will have seen in some of the previous webinars, Paradigm Norton continues to drive a value-based mission that prioritises a purpose alongside profit. I'm just going to go through a few little housekeeping bits, not very much. I won't bore you with them. We really want to get to questions. We find that that's where the discussion really comes alive. We really want to help those of you that have joined us tonight. So there is a Q&A section in the Zoom. Please ask your Q&A questions there. Feel free to use the chat box to say who you are and where you're from if you want to kind of do a little bit of a shout out to each other, but please make sure your questions are in the Q&A section, and do just put them in whenever you think of them. We won't get to them till the end, but as we can see them coming through, we'll know when to kind of move from our discussion quickly over to yours. So as soon as it pops in your head, feel free to put it in. Don't wait for me to kind of give you a nod. The recording will be shared with you after this evening, as well as all the panelist details. Please bear in mind that this discussion will be placed on YouTube as the others. So if you're asking a sensitive question, I won't read out the names, but if you are asking a sensitive question that you don't want to be attached to your name, you can ask the question anonymously. We're also asked to remind you, because we are coming from a financial planning firm, that the content of this webinar is for information purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. Please seek independent financial advice before making any decisions. The opinions discussed are those of the individuals only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the organisation. So why are we here tonight? Retirement. I remember when I was young, back in the day, that I saw images of retirement as like cruise ships and saga couples in their gardens, and that there was retirement parties at work, was like a carriage clock. You see on TV shows, wouldn't you? A carriage clock or a watch was handed over at a bit of a dull retirement party. Then that person went off into the ether, not knowing where they were going, pipe and slippers and all those connotations. But that's not the way it is now. Due to the realities of today's society and changing attitudes to age, how we view this later part of our lives is dramatically changing. Do many of us even know when we can retire? And do we even want to be on a cruise ship? Do we need another watch? I know we are all sick of the gaps that women face. So with trepidation, I start to mention another one, but there is a pension gap, which is actually significantly higher than the gender pay gap that we hear so much about. The gender pay gap stands at approximately 35 to 40%, meaning that women's pension wealth is about a third less than the men's on average. Women typically retire with pension savings of around 51,000 compared to men's of 157,000. Spoiler alert, neither of them are probably enough. But here we go. This is because most women have given up time for our families. Women take on average 5 to 10 years out of the workforce, whether that's for your children or for later life care for elderly parents. We have taken lower salaries, that other gap, and more often in part-time work, 42% of working women versus 13% of men. And we were fed several myths about who would be taking care of us and our money. So we would have just saved less in general, and we also had less to save. But some good news, I don't know whether it is, but we live longer than men, so we need more money. And we can't necessarily guarantee that that man, if we were in a relationship with a man, is handing over his pension to us. So we really do have to think about this. But what I really enjoy about this conversation, even though it sounds a bit doom and gloom, is that women, and just women in general, is that rather than get defeated, women are looking at retirement very differently, which is why we've picked these panelists that we have here today. This isn't going to be a negative conversation about, oh, it's all so crap. And today we'll explore what retirement could really look like for us. We can face the challenge and still make those later years count, because they're a very exciting part of our life. So, as I mentioned, these three amazing panelists. I'm going to ask you all to introduce yourselves, and slightly different to what I've done before. When you hear the word retirement, can you just give me a word or two about what that means to you, or what it makes you think of? Because I know you're going to think about it very differently to the way I've sort of described. I will start with Rebecca, if I can.
So, hello everyone. Thank you, Carmel. So I'm Rebecca Hill, and I am the founder of a leadership consultancy, Sherpa. And I'm most definitely, after 25 years in large organisational life, now living what I call my fulfilling encore. And I have no plans at present to retire in any sense or shape of the word. And the words that come to my mind really are when it about retirement is exciting, but definitely tinged with some undertones of sort of questioning, fear, those sorts of things. But that's really what comes to mind for me. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'll go to you, Kiarna.
Cool. So yeah, I'm Kiarna, founder of Retire in Rome, which I created really to help people find more confidence, skills, and inspiration to embrace retirement life, should they wish to travel. So to overcome their travel apprehensions and just really enjoy life through kind of coaching and a soon-to-be kind of online version too. And I've also spent the last 15 years in pension communications consulting world. So lots of trying to make the very complicated into simple, easy, engaging like communications that are actually like really interesting to read. Yeah, I love travel, sharing ideas and tips on how empowering it can be for all of us. So really pleased to be here. My retirement words that I hear from my clients, there are two, similar to Rebecca, but opportunity, definitely about freedom and time and choice, but also overwhelm, because it can feel incredibly like, what on earth is this? How do I do it? How do I navigate it? So I'm sure we'll cover lots of things around that today.
Yeah. And then Ruth, over to you.
Hello, thanks, Carmel. Good evening, everyone. I'm Ruth Sturkey. I am a former chartered financial planner and financial planning business owner. Since I've finished my formal work in 2020, I've been exploring really what it is that I really want to do in this stage of life. And I've been exploring things such as behavioral science, coaching, and I've been also thinking about well-being, particularly in my former role as the chair of the Institute for Financial Wellbeing. And what that has made me realize is, excuse me, the part that money plays in this thing that we call retirement, but the incredibly important other aspects that need to exist to have a worthwhile and meaningful, happy and healthy retirement. I also write a blog called 1,000 Weeks, and I think Carmel's going to talk about the derivation of that somewhat later, where I reflect on money, life and time. Sorry, I've got a bit of a cold, so I think I'm a bit croaky, but my three words, so I could say something like over the hill and knackered, but that wouldn't be very helpful. So I think if I'm thinking about this positively, which I do most of the time, I think the words are very similar to what we've already heard, but freedom, choice, and possibility.
Very exciting. I like that's a nice positive way to look at it. And I really like, Rebecca, the fulfilling encore. I love that. I know that you explore that in this book, your book. So you go into this in quite detail in this book, From Work Life to New Life, rewriting the rules of retirement for smart professionals. Could you just start off by just sharing some of the alternatives to the traditional retirement, sort of, you know, some of the, you know, on the back of the words that you guys have used and what you've sort of been exploring in the book and your work?
Yeah, I'm very happy to, Carmel. So, as you alluded to, I think historically retirement was very much a day, a point in time where you worked towards most of your working life and then you stopped. And then whatever filled or didn't fill the void, that was retirement. What we found, and my co-author and I, when we did the research and the work that then led to the publishing of the book, and that work was also very much anchored in the leadership work that I was doing in large organizations, was that retirement is shifting fundamentally. Yeah. So this idea of it being a point in time is no longer relevant. So what we're finding is that individuals are choosing to either wind down and then ramp up other activities, or maybe through things like redundancy or ill health. That's something slightly more negative, I suppose, is they look to work in a different way. And when I use the word work, I mean work, it can be financially remunerated. And I think, as you alluded to, a lot of women do need to work for financial remuneration, but some also choose to work for financial remuneration as they go sort of into that encore stage. Yeah. And I think what's important there is that sort of word choice, because I think often, you know, what we were seeing is that individuals initially thought they didn't have much choice, but actually there is a lot that you can choose to do if you sort of look at that encore stage, that retirement stage, in a different way. So if you want to do, if you need to or want to do economically remunerated work, you can do either high octane, you know, you can go into consulting, you can do board work that's remunerated, you know, you can kind of really carry on doing that sort of, you know, quite high level, you know, sort of full on work. Or others choose to go into remunerated roles that are maybe a bit more slower paced, I suppose is how I would describe it. And so they might do things that are very flexible around their time that they want to sort of fit in. And so that could be things like, you know, in invigilating, or you know, sort of working for a more local business or organization. Some even go and fulfill their lifelong dreams, and say setting up coffee shops and those sorts of things. So I think what's really important here is to say, you know, it is shifting, it is changing as people are living longer, as they're having to potentially therefore fund that longer life that you're alluding to. But that you do have choice in all of this. I think that's the important thing. The other thing that we were saying, and I'm very conscious I'm taking up a lot of time, is that the idea of purpose. And I think this is very, very important for women, by the way. Purpose is a word that gets thrown around a lot, and purpose can be something big and bold, or it can be something quite small and quiet with a small p. But I think what is important for women is whatever they choose to do as they go into that encore, that retirement stage, is they want it to matter. And by mattering, it could be literally volunteering in a reading scheme, yeah, to twice a week. But they want it to have a purpose, and they want it to have impact. Or it could be something much bigger and bolder. And that's what we're seeing is, I think, very important to women as well as they move into that stage. So I think that's some of the things that we found that are quite different now, based upon the factors that you've alluded to, Carmel, as how we're seeing sort of retirement really shifting. The good news, as you say, the news flash, the good news is those individuals who have purpose in their life tend to live a healthier longevity. So living long is one thing, but living healthily, as you covered in your last webinar, the third one in the series of 4, is actually what we really want to aspire to. And so I think having a bit of clarity around the purpose piece around what you're going to be doing in that encore stage, in that retirement piece, is really important. And that can be, by the way, stopping all work and not doing economically remunerated work, but still having purpose. And I know Kiarna's going to talk a bit about that as well, because lots of people find great purpose through exploration and travel and all of that, but I won't steal her thunder on that. Yeah,
I am going to get to that. I am going to get to the retire and roam. But Ruth, I know that a lot of what Rebecca says like really resonates with you. You've been quoted. I quote you as saying quite a lot that you hate the word retirement, and you talked about well-being. You know, how do you see it? Because you know you have kind of been involved in the world of retirement through several roles. So do you resonate with what Rebecca is saying, and where does that well-being piece come in?
Yeah, I mean, I love the way that Rebecca's just kind of framed what modern retirement looks like, because as you alluded to in your introduction, you know, the idea of you know, saga cruises and slow walks across the beach, albeit being on the beach is very lovely, but you know, and carriage clocks, you know, I think as a society we've built this image as retirement as equaling over the hill, past it, no longer relevant. And that's why I particularly rail against that term. To be fair, I can't think of a better term that people readily understand. So I'm happy to go with it for the purpose of this evening. But in the work I've been doing since I stopped working full time, I've been learning about well-being, as I mentioned, and there's lots of different definitions of well-being. The one that I like though, because I think it's quite simple and accessible, is from a Gallup survey, and the authors were Tom Rath and Jim Harter, and they identify 5 pillars which overall make up well-being. The first, exactly what Rebecca's been saying, is we need to have, at any stage of life, either a fulfilling career or some type of purpose in life. And I like that differentiation between big capital P, oh my God, what am I going to do? And purpose, just feeling that, you know, you're getting value out of the day. It talks about the quality of your social relationships, whether that's family or friends, and the importance of that to one's well-being, as well as being a member of a community. Now, this is an interesting one, I think, because particularly when we're working, unless we're in, to my mind, what's an obvious community, such as a faith-based community or maybe sports-based, you tend to think, well, not really part of a community. But for me, my work has been a very big community, and I recognize now the strength and support and friendship I got from work. The 4th pillar of well-being is health, and as you were clearly covered that last time, Carmel, but in my years as being a financial planner, I've seen plenty of people who've got more than enough money, but really poor health. And the final pillar of health, of course, is money. Now, interestingly, the research tells us that money is the least important of those 5 pillars that I've just mentioned, but it does underpin and enable the other 4 pillars. So it's fascinating. When I reflect back to my time as being a financial planner, and I've sat in front of lots of people to help them plan for retirement, at retirement and then beyond, I think it's really fascinating. Now, I'm going to be conceited enough to say I think I was a bloody good financial planner. But with what I've been learning about well-being, I suddenly realized we solve people's money problems, but we could have done, we can now do, and think firms like Paradigm Norton are definitely embracing this, is actually almost signposts well before retirement the type of issues that people are likely to find they contend with outside of money as they move closer to that point. Because a lot of people still do have a cliff edge retirement, and that's actually quite painful. All of a sudden you lose career/purpose and community, many social connections. You may have all the money that you need, but the negative effects of those things can soon start to accumulate. So I think I've drifted slightly off subject with, but you know, so for me, it's the negative connotations around retirement. But I think we are able and are creating something new, and I think that's exciting.
Yeah, I think it really is, and as you alluded to, you know, talking about the health aspect of it, and if we take care of ourselves and we get to that point in our lives and we have good health and we have kind of those 5 pillars in place, it can be a really exciting, a sort of a really exciting time. And actually, what you were talking about, Rebecca, is some of the stuff that we did in the reinvention piece at the beginning, where, you know, how can we start businesses? I think there was a recent piece of research. It was Eleanor Mills that was part of it, wasn't it? About lots of women in their midlife, like starting businesses and starting a new chapter. And in reinvention, we talk about that, about, you know, going on to this kind of 3rd or 4th career in that part. So it is really exciting. But some people just want to just stop, and they want to retire, and they want to roam, and they want to adventure, and they want to travel, which is equally as exciting. What are you seeing, Kiarna, with your clients? Like, what are they talking to? How are they approaching retirement? Because they're either already there or they're coming up to that space.
That's it. Yeah, they could also be on the way and feeling like there is either the cliff, or even if they don't want to approach the cliff, it's that transition, which is extremely confusing for the people that I speak to. And it's kind of a couple of things that I think they're probably looking for, really, is firstly that permission. A lot of clients I see have like worked so hard their whole lives, really, you know, trying to save as much money as possible, and that kind of get there and it's like, oh gosh, should I spend this on myself? Should I not be spending this on my family? I mean, it's a bit of everything, but it's that permission of okay, so sometimes like my clients have come along from their daughter or son or a family member that have kind of introduced me, and they've given them the permission to do it. So yeah, sometimes it's just really nice to have that permission. And that second thing is around just inspiration. So again, people are really busy, and a lot of people, even any time of life, don't have time to think, where do I want to go away? What should I do with my week of holiday that I've booked off work? So I come in and say, you know, let's like plan it out together. And sometimes it's practical things like even how to leave your house secure, how much it will cost so you can do more than 1 trip a year, how to stay in touch with like loved ones and everything. And even more so now, it's exactly what's been said, which is that how to live and balance an active retirement. There's a stat, I think, that it's by 2027, 15 million people will be in an active retirement, which involves paid work, as Beck said, and other hobbies and activities. So it's also involving like a digital nomad lifestyle, which is definitely not just for millennials. So yeah, it's about bringing everything together, inspiring, practical stuff, but also just bringing everything together.
Okay. So it sounds like all 3 of you as well are kind of saying the more planning that we can do, the better. And you know, I think there's probably a few of us that are here today, including myself. I'm in my 40s, so this is sort of, you know, 20, yeah, let's say if I'm lucky, 20 years away, maybe 30 if I'm not so lucky, years away. What can we be, I think it'd be really good to think about what can we be doing now. You know, sometimes it does feel really like, oh God, that's so far away, but what could we be doing now to kind of, so we don't meet that cliff edge, so we're not having all these hesitations, so we're really clear about what we're doing. Can I come to you first, Rebecca, on that? Because I know you do some work.
I mean, look, the first thing I'm going to say is an absolute given, is pay as much as you possibly can into your pension, right? That is the absolute first thing I would say, because that's going to give you choice, and choice is a good thing. But you know, you're right, it does, and I think that's part of the issue. It does feel so far off, you know. But what I would say is a couple of things. You can build longevity into your work and the choices that you make. So really think about, you know, the sort of things, the skills and the experiences that you're accruing, and how you can then leverage those in different ways as you go into your fulfilling encore. Either if you do need to carry on doing paid work, then in that context, and or in unpaid activities, whether it's volunteering or other such things. So I think you can always be really mindful of the different things that you're doing and how they might add to your longevity of relevance, because I think staying relevant is really important. And by relevant, that also includes things like really good digital skills. So to be a digital nomad, I'm sorry, but you do need to have pretty good digital skills, right? So it's those sorts of things that I think are really important. The other thing that's really vital is for women in particular is we wear so many different hats and we have so many different expectations of us compared to men. And I'm talking in broad stereotypes here. But particularly, excuse me, and a bit like you, Ruth, I've got a bit of a sore throat.
It's really terrible hay fever season. It's really
Yeah.
bad. I think it's getting us all. Yeah.
So what I would say is think really carefully about being intentional and not going for the default. So being really, really aware of what your needs are, what you want, what your interests are, because what I've seen with a lot of women is they go kind of from one set of expectations and the workplace and family and everything into retirement into a second sort of set of expectations, and that largely is around the caring, unpaid caring agenda. If I'm really honest, often women can end up being the default unpaid carer, whether it's elder care, younger care, whatever, caring for a sick spouse, but that is often what can happen. And I think so it's really important that women think about what they want. And I think those are the sort of two things that I would say. Yeah, that sort of, you know, making sure that you know what you want, and then, building that longevity piece in as well into your experiences and skills, etc.
Yeah. I mean, I think I shared with you guys before. I mean, I obviously run my own business now, and I'm a business consultant. And then I've also this year also just launched another business, an app. But I don't want to be doing that. I really have aspirations to be a therapist in my 60s. It's just something I've always just really thought about, like in my own little practice, that I just kind of see some people and help some people. And and I think to myself, maybe I should start the studies early and do it slowly, because it's quite intense studying. It's all of that kind of thing, like thinking about, if you think you've got another career ahead of you, what could that be, and will it be okay? I mean, to be fair, everyone will be getting therapy from AI in about 20 years, to be fair, but I can but dream, can't I? Anyway, you mentioned at the top of that about the pension, that lovely word pension. That's the word I hate. It's been the bane of my life since, because I worked in financial services and particularly in marketing, the bane of my life. But you two have both, Kiarna and Ruth, worked with, in your roles and your other roles around pensions. Can we start with workplace pensions? Can we talk about that first? And then Ruth, we'll go to you and you can sort of do the bigger financial planning piece, just to give some people some real good clarity on what we should be really doing now, 20 years on, and then, just kind of some real sort of tangible takeaways I think would be helpful.
Yeah, sure. So my first big thing in this is always get to know how pensions work. And that seems like an obvious thing, but you will get sent information from your providers, and just don't put it in the bin. It's more interesting than you think, I promise, especially if we've written it. So essentially it's a savings tool, right? That's tax efficient. We don't have to call it a pension, even though you will see it all the time. But just get to know it, get comfy with it. Be like, oh yeah, that's what my investment's doing. Be kind of savvy about it. It's kind of cooler to be savvy about these things now rather than ignore them. So just read it, essentially. Spend 5 minutes doing it and it'll all compound, and you'll learn something, I promise. And if you're really not sure what it means, because sometimes it is absolute jargon, do ask a professional. Like, that's what they're there for. So even if it's just one session with a professional to get your head around what on earth you've got, what you don't have, and so you go out of that feeling confident with your money, it's totally worth it, in my opinion. So yeah, that would be one thing. And then just the other thing, I think, which we're getting better at now as a society, but talk to your friends. It was my sister's hen do the other day, and I was in the front of this taxi and we were going somewhere, and one of the girls in the back has just moved from the UK to Spain. And so there was a lot of chatter about that and catching up. And the conversation turned to pensions without me prodding it, and I couldn't be more proud. So maybe it's going in, but they were having the whole conversation. They're a bit younger than me, but they were having a whole conversation about, oh, okay, so maybe I could go overseas, or maybe it's okay as long as I've got a plan, a financial plan. So glass of wine and some pensions chat is my second definite recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not pensions chat, maybe sort of later life vision boarding or something. Whatever floats your boat. Sorry, I do have a vision board here. I'm not taking a mick out of vision boards. I'm all for a vision board. I do it for work all the time. Anyway, and Ruth, financial planning in general, is there kind of like things that we should definitely be thinking about? Like making sure we're maxing out what we're putting into our pensions.
Yeah, just one thing to add to the pension things, and then I'm gonna talk a bit wider. But I remember speaking at a women's money do a few years ago. Funny enough, you weren't there that time, Carmel, because normally we're both at the same event.
The same room.
But what happened? I was talking about pensions and stuff, and at the end, a young woman came up to me in her 20s and said to me really proudly, "I've got a pension." I said, "That's great." And she said, "And I've invested it really safely. I've kind of got most of my money in bonds and just a little bit in equities." So that equities are shares. And the point I want to make here is the way women are wired is to hear the word risk and think, oh, that sounds like a scary thing. I don't want to take on any unnecessary risk. Equities are risky if you need the money next year or in 4 years' time, 5 years' time. But if you're saving for 10, 20, 30 plus years, equities is the place for money to be. Now, what happens a lot with workplace pensions, if people are not being advised, is they go into like a default fund, which very often I found is veering on a lower risk than a younger person should need. So that's the final thing I want to say about pensions is have a look at your pension selection. Equities are your friend. And that's a whole other conversation. But you mentioned, I think it was Rebecca, you mentioned about kind of planning for the future, and it's a difficult thing to do. And there's a lot of science in the behavioral science field around the difficulties we have in imagining our future self. We almost feel like a stranger if we're trying to imagine ourselves 10, 20 years out. And that's quite a weird concept. But according to the research, that's how we perceive ourselves. So apart from the fact that we would prefer the idea of spending our money on fun things to do now, that's why we also find it very difficult to save for our future. So it is a very difficult task. And I always remember a client talking to me who what motivated her to save was a vision of a future she didn't want. So slightly reversing this. And her vision, which again became very vivid to me, she did not want to be an old lady in a flat over a shop with a blanket over her knee sitting next to a Cala gas heater. Now that's evocative, isn't it? And I don't know where that came from for her. I'm imagining it was a family member of some description. But sometimes it's a negative that can cause us to do something positive in the now. So I would urge anybody younger listening to actually think in those terms. What is it that you don't want? And use that as a motivator to help you do maybe what you should do. So financial planning, it's a great thing to do. I love it. It's great to dream big, and I'd love the idea of bringing mood boards into a financial planning room. I think that's a super idea, Carmel. But what we tend to use when we're financial planning is some cash flow planning tools, so we can help people work out what they're online to get by doing what they're currently doing. And if there's a gap between what they think they're going to need in later life, what they need to be saving now in order to actually meet those goals. And it's super powerful. There are free tools that are available online, and there's a lot of app-based things that are available. but it's a really fun exercise, and a bit like you're saying, Kiarna, about paying to have somebody explain how our pensions work. It's a really worthwhile exercise to do, so I would really recommend it. And as Rebecca was saying, it obviously just the two things going to influence your retirement outcome: how much you actually save in the investment fund that you're invested in, and those are the two main, and the time that you're saving for. So being mindful of those three things, I think, is a really good thing to do. And I think one of the dangers we women have, particularly if we've got families and other commitments, is the pension is what happens after everything else has been paid for. Please pay yourself first, pay your future self first, and just automate it, let it happen, and nudge it up each year. That's really going to help you get to where you want to be in the future. I do, however, want to just say, and this will come into my book recommendation later on, there is also a time and a place, a right time to do certain things. So it is, of course, always really important to be planning for that future. But we all know stuff happens. Sometimes it can be just the time to just do it now. Go and take a year out, go traveling. Work's going to be there when you come back. And I know that's easier said than done. But I think sometimes we do delay. Somebody told me what the term was. I heard it this week. I don't know what it is, but let's just go with the term delayed gratification. But it's waiting for, when I get to that point, I will be happy. When I get there, I'll be happy. When I get to retirement, I'll be happy. It doesn't work like that. So it is about balance. And I think that's super important, as well as doing all the good things that you should be doing.
Yeah. So if they're coming to retire in Rome, someone's coming to retire in Rome and they've got a lovely pocket of money, and what's that success? Because to me, that says to me, oh, they've done really well. They've really thought about their retirement. They know that they potentially want to go and do something adventurous with their retirement. And I'd love to hear from Rebecca and Ruth as well. Those clients that have got to that point of retirement, or coming up to that point of retirement, and are successful and are sitting in front of and thinking, right, this is where I want to go. What have you seen? What are those types of people? What have they kind of done? What's that mindset? I think it's more of because I think a lot of what you guys are saying is around mindset. And is there any kind of thing that you're seeing that kind of, a successful retirement mindset that they've kind of attributed to themselves?
Yeah, mindset is really key. And anyone that I know that I think is in, their terms, living a successful retirement, is always somebody that has really tuned into their, especially as females, their intuition. So intuition is really, really incredibly powerful. I think it comes from apparently our cave days when we would sit together and tell the men where to go to find the food, apparently. Been learning about this recently. But inside if there's more that you want from life. And people who seek to travel in retirement, to really do something with their retirement, they have spent time doing probably their vision board, getting to know themselves and tuning into that. And that can change. Some people don't even think about it, and then all of a sudden it's okay, yeah, no, this is something else. And that is impacted from life events that happen, loss of loved ones and divorce and whatever could happen in life, that can change. But also the mindset of somebody, I have to say, is having that simple financial plan. People aim to retire if that's what they want. A plan, exactly what Ruth was saying about how much you might need, or how much what you don't want to do, will really help. And there are tools online to help you think about how much you might need in retirement when it comes, if that's what you want. But having also a conversation can really help. So those are kind of the couple of things: the intuition, and then the more practical thing of having a financial plan.
Yeah. And I really want to go to questions, but I'd be interested to hear from you, Rebecca and Ruth, just quickly, when you've got clients that have come to you and they've got choice, they've got, what do you think they possess that's been able to get them to that place?
For me, I really work quite a lot on this idea. Choice can be paralyzing, yeah. And a lot of people can go into paralysis over choice, yeah, analysis paralysis or whatever you want to call it. But because they feel overwhelmed, some also, feel quite fearful, apathetic, whatever. But the fact is, I try to get them to act, to experiment. Just take small steps. Yeah, don't overthink it. And I think that is really powerful. If you don't know exactly what, that's absolutely fine. Just take small steps and figure it out, experiment. Yeah, along the way.
Yeah, that was a real theme in reinvention as well. Was just get on with it and just do something all the time. And Ruth, anything to add or?
I think what Rebecca just said there just really encapsulates what I was going to say, and also what I'm experiencing. Still feel like I'm exploring what is my next big thing. What am I actually doing? And I've done a number of different bits and pieces that may or may not have worked out, and that's okay. But also, I really relate to that paralysis of choice. It's like, wow. I mean, and then of course one starts to feel guilty because I've got all of these choices. Why can't I decide what I want to do? And I think to it's it's easy to say just need to have a positive mindset. I think what we in the financial planning world will increasingly start to do is to help our clients adopt and find and have the resources to help them think through what some of these issues are, because they absolutely do exist. And I think the more that we as financial planners can start to coach and signpost and guide people, the more fulfilled next act people are going to have.
Yeah, I am.
And Carmel, can I just add one other thing? Because I know you did talk a bit about the work that Noon's doing around the entrepreneur bit, but somebody also mentioned community. I think it was you, Ruth, when you were talking about the model. I think find your tribe as well. Find a bit of a community. Just start anywhere, somewhere, because I think community is a huge part of this transition into the fulfilling encore. And it might be for a season, it might be for a reason, it might be for a lifetime. But just start somewhere and find some community that can sort of help you. And Noon is one of those, but there's something called the Modern Elders Academy. There are lots of these different communities out there, both in person or if you're struggling in person, virtually as well. Yeah,
that's a really good tip. I mean, I also tried to I've got ADHD, so making a decision is hell. And one of the things that someone sort of taught me is like, what are the things that you get really envious of, like, or you get pangs of jealousy when you see someone doing something or being something, and it's like where that jealousy and envy flows there tends to be a reason for that. It tends to be because that's where you want to be, that you're looking at that person and you're thinking, actually that's what I want to do. That's realistically, that's, I'm jealous of that person with that career or doing that thing. For me at the moment, I'm very envious of everyone that's like getting out and wild swimming. I keep talking about wild swimming and I haven't actually done it yet. And yoga, Ruth knows this about me, my constant battle with being a yogi. And I get very jealous when I see someone just doing yoga so brilliantly. And it's because I just really want to do it. And I'm jealous that they've done it and I haven't. And I think that sometimes it guides me and my decision making. And if it's not leading me there, then what the hell am I doing? Just everything else, just cut out the noise and just get on with that thing. So I don't know if that's helpful to anyone. Anyway, I'm going to go to questions. Enough about me and my swimming and yoga. Okay, so someone's put a lovely comment at the top. Retirement for me is aspirational. It's a goal and it should be a very positive one. And some really nice things. I'm going to go to the questions though, because they're mounting up. How can families support those retiring? Anyone want to give something on that?
I'm happy to step in if that's helpful. I mean, there's a couple of things, right? So families, if we're talking about the nuclear family, so if it's a spouse, if it's direct offspring, etc., I think for women, it's about supporting them in this stage that they're in to realize some of their dreams and their ambitions. Because back to the point I was making earlier, and I think a few of us have made, is often we suppress those. We're kind of the bottom of the laundry list, but you know, below the laundry actually. And so it's really about being supportive, listening, encouraging, all of those sorts of things. There is a lovely comment in here about traveling parents in their 80s, and I can see the pride in the voice of the person who has put that in the chat. And so I think that's and if you are in a sort of spousal relationship and in a partner relationship, is doing your planning together and taking into account each other's wishes and desires. And there's some lovely exercises that you can do. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with the Wheel of Life one and the roles and goals and those, but there's some lovely exercises, some of them in the book, but they're also available, just you can just download them on the internet. But I think there's some lovely things that you can do. I also think when women say you're asking for help, when they say no, listen and be supportive of that. And I'm thinking here particularly around caring responsibilities. So when our daughter was born and I asked my mum how she's retired, how she would like to be involved, she said, I don't want to be on call. I don't want to commit to permanent days. I'd rather it was something that we did, you know, with, you know, on an ad hoc pre-arranged basis. Yeah, obviously emergencies happen, but it's those sorts of things. So being respectful as well when women particularly say no around the caring piece, because I think it can be very hard. Yeah.
Just to add to that, it's really hard to, especially say like my friends and I come together in like late 30s, and we've all got parents that are getting older and need our support, and we really want to be there to support, but it's really hard to know how. And that's kind of where like my business kind of started, was to try and like be a point of somewhere that people like me can point their family to as like something, as a resource. But I think there's more and more resources, community, as has always already been said as well, grows, there's going to be that pool that myself and my peers can point our loved ones to. So yeah, and we can share some, I'm sure afterwards. But yeah, just building that support network is really important.
Yeah. This is so I'm going to send this next question to you, Ruth, because it's quite financial, if that's okay. But you can say, so buying assets versus pension payments, what do you recommend for directors of companies?
So I think, so I'm not quite sure what the person who's asked the question means necessarily by buying assets. I'm assuming maybe property. I think it makes no difference whether you are an employee, self-employed, or a director of a business. I think pensions is the first thing to look at when savings for retirement. As Kiarna made reference to, it's really just a glorified saving schemes with tax breaks, is the way I like to think about it. But some of the clients I've seen who've retired really well also have a mix of assets. So which leads to different income streams. So they have got their pension, which they funded well. They may have bought a buy-to-let property. And there was a time when buying a buy-to-let property was actually a very profitable and tax efficient thing to do. I think that's possibly less so now, but again, that's a different conversation. They may also have ongoing income from consultancy, non-executive roles, and they may also have other assets such as ISAs and general investment accounts or investment bonds, which are just different forms of invest. In the same way as a pension is an investment, a pension is just a wrapper around some investments. An ISA is just a wrapper around investments, and a bond or a general investment account is just a wrapper around investments. So I think it makes sense to have a spread of these different investment wrapper types, which can include property. But I don't think it is any different for a company director than it is for anybody else. We all have the same things available. I'm not sure whether that has addressed the question that was asked, but that's what comes to mind.
Okay, thank you. I know that, I mean, I'm self-employed. You guys, you know, self-employed, it is slightly trickier. You know, you're sort of in charge. You don't have this kind of matched benefit necessarily, and there's always something else you could be spending your money on when businesses are concerned. It's investing here, there and everywhere. So I know that for and when you look at the statistics, self-employed people really do have lower pension pots and stuff like that. So you know, I know if there's anyone else who is self-employed, and hopefully that helped, but if there's anything else, then please do ask. There's another question here about what's on your retirement vision boards. Anyone want to share?
I say travel, it won't be a surprise for them.
Yeah.
I'll let the others reply to this.
Just travel across the board.
I think for me, I mean, travel has featured very, very heavily over the last 12 months or so for me, which has been fantastic. And there's still many more places I want to go. But when I really imagine what my vision board for retirement looks like, yeah, I think it goes back to you know, a combination of culture and countryside, friends, being healthy and fit, and having choice. So rather than specific things that I want to do, it is just about having the means and the physical ability to enjoy life to the best of my ability. And I think having seen people I'm close to suffer physically in you know, relatively young age, or mentally, I don't take those two things for granted. And so for as often as I can be fit and well and partake in crazy cycles or cycle in holidays and trekking holidays and things, and that's what I will do, as well as kind of learning and growing at the same time.
Yeah. Rebecca?
Well, I'm a bit of a lifelong learning junkie, so I'm pretty sure there's more learning down the road, and more studying, and maybe yet another role. Who knows? You know, another evolution. I'm on my fourth career at the moment, so who knows? There might be another one around the corner at some point. And I think the other thing that I definitely have got on my vision board is something to do with some volunteering. When I was young, I did a lot of youth activism work, and I think that's something that I can see is not very fashionable right now, because I can see that a lot of people, there's a lot of fear attached to that. But as I get older, and I suppose I can see that somebody's got to do it. So I can see that there's probably some more activism work around the corner as well. Yeah. And then all the lovely stuff, like I do want to travel more, and you know, and yeah, do various other things that yeah, the more pleasurable, I suppose. Yeah.
I agree with you that activism piece is like really key for me as well, because when I see people, you know, when you saw Extinction Rebellion and you saw these people and they were saying, you know, I have to do this for my grandchildren. It's very selfish of me to just ignore this problem and leave this problem for my children. And I think we're living in such a difficult time, and I think we're still going to have these problems. And so for us to get to be part of that, and for me to be able to give more time to that, I think that's, you know, that's definitely something on mine, as well as yoga and wild swimming and being a therapist and all of the things. My vision board's very busy vision board. And also my parents really wanted to have 2 houses, one in Italy and one in Ireland, and that never happened for them, and I've adopted that as my other thing. I'm going to live to 100 apparently. Anyway, what other questions?
Well, then I've got the perfect book recommendation for you, Carmel.
Okay, let me know.
At the end.
Tina's been making some lovely comments. Thank you, Tina, for giving all of your insights. She talked about behavioural finance and looking at our future self is key, but that's so hard to do when you're in your 20s or 30s, when it seems so far in the future. So hopefully the vision boarding is helping, and just really think about what you want for your future self. And then, so we've got Diane from Virginia in the US. Hello. How do you navigate uncertainty when planning for retirement? Here in the US, changing policies and a shifting political landscape have made programs like Social Security increasingly unpredictable. Is it possible to take that unexpected changes into like these into account in financial planning? And if I did have a question on mine about, you know, when life throws you these curveballs. So sometimes it can be exactly this, like politics and the economy, and sometimes it is those things that kind of happen to you in your life, whether it's poor health or a parent has to come and live with you or something like that, or something with your children. Can you help into that? Like, how can you take into account with that with financial planning? Should I go to you first, Ruth? Should I pick on you first?
Yeah, why not? You know, it is, you know, what's going on in the world at the moment is, you know, possibly what none of us would have expected, you know, just, you know, a few years ago. I think we can only plan for what we know. But what we can do is build in some contingency around that. And so from a financial planning perspective, what that often is around the basic things such as building up a sufficient cash buffer that can be used to actually help insulate you if there are difficulties that you face, whether that's from loss of employment, whether that is salary difficulties, whatever that is. You know, having cash available is always a real go-to place. It's also though about, you know, I'm thinking of retirement. You know, you very often, you know, people suffer from ill health, or clearly we're all going to die at some point. Very often, if we're talking specifically about this stage of life, we may be beyond things such as life insurance or income protection and things like that, which would typically be protecting Kiarna and Carmel's age group much more. And so it is about really trying to build up contingency funds, paying down debt, getting to be debt free as quickly as you can. If you do have debt, try to get it onto lower rates of interest. And also just talking about what's going on. I think trying to share problems, whether that's with a financial planner, whether that's with friends, whether that's with relatives, with your partner. I think it is really just a matter of just really, you know, a problem shared is a problem halved, isn't it? I'm also wondering whether the question is, a friend was talking to me recently and just saying, with all of this uncertainty in the world, I think I'm going to sell my ISA. And she had money in a stocks and shares ISA. And that's not what we would typically advise. If you have a financial plan and you're building for the long term, when one's in fear, it's not a good time to change that plan. It's to go back to the plan, remember what you're working towards, and the plan should insulate you against the ups and downs of life. And I think that is one of the very key benefits of working with a professional financial planner who will do their best to work with you to anticipate what life's going to throw at us. Mm-hmm. There are certain things around policy and world leaders that maybe it's less easy to see, but we can only control what we can control. And I think it's very useful to remember that.
Yeah. There's two questions here which are kind of the same. So I'm going to sort of combine them if that's okay. So how do you recommend to start a conversation with a partner about our pensions? And the other question was, what if my partner wants a quiet retirement, but I want to travel, but he has the larger pension? So it's kind of this, like, how do we have conversations with our partners about what we want to do? And I unfortunately couldn't do the relationships panel. I wasn't very well, but one of the things we talked about there is, I mean, they talk about divorce and death, you know, because they're kind of some of the things that can hit you and hit relationships and cause some difficulties with finances. But was also a quote that I heard was from an FT journalist. I've used this a lot, Ruth, if you've heard it before. It's the biggest threat to your wealth is sleeping next to you in your bed. And I also think that could potentially be your retirement dreams if you're not on the same page about it. So do you have any advice? Maybe anyone can jump in, I guess, about how you get on the same page on this, because it could be very different. Rebecca, do you maybe want to add? Have you got any tips?
Yeah, I'm conscious. I mean, I'm conscious I've been talking a lot, but yes, I'm absolutely. I think from my experience, from what I see, is that, well, there's a couple of things playing out here. It's an understanding of kind of, if you're in a relationship, it's not my or your money, it's money. Yeah. Now, I appreciate if you've always treated it like my or your money, it's very hard to then get to a place where it is simply money. It's money of the unit, that you've created, whether you have kids or don't have kids, but it's shared money. And so that would be my first thing, is how can you open up a conversation actually around, we've got this amount of, money set aside, not your money, my money, but this amount of money set aside for our pension. Maybe do something like the Wheel of Life exercise or a vision board, but maybe that's a bit step too far. So maybe it's easy just to sort of say, well, what are our health? What are our kind of hobbies? What do we want from a sort of a family perspective? So that's sort of the different elements of the Wheel of Life when it comes to retirement. And then back to what Ruth and Kiarna have been saying, and then you can do some cash flow modeling, and that helps if you have an independent financial advisor, to then using the Wheel of Life, that sort of aspirations piece, is then looking actually, well, what do we actually need if we're going to have like option A, option B, option C. C's kind of the optimum, B is kind of the middle road, and A is the bare basics, and you can start sort of, and that can be a bit more of a left-brained way, I suppose, rational way of approaching it, is to say, okay, so here's what we want, this is what I want, this is what you want, do a shared Wheel of Life exercise, and then go to the financial advisor and say, actually, this is kind of what we're thinking, can you help us understand where we're at? But it does go back to the point for me, which is it is part of that conversation that you need to have with the partner, is actually around, it's a pot of money. It's not because often women have given up lots of opportunities to earn more, and that earning more would then also impact their pension because of the different expectations around maybe having kids, elder care, all of that other stuff. And so that's often why their pots are smaller. And so it's then unfair, quite frankly, I'm going to use the unfair word, in a relationship to then say, oh, well, I'm going to have to downgrade my ambitions in retirement or my fulfilling encore because I've got less, because my money has gone towards, has been sacrificed for these things that the whole family has benefited from, or the whole unit, it doesn't have to be a family, but the whole kind of unit has benefited from. Now, it's a little bit different if you've met your partner, your spouse, later in life, but I still think it stands. If you want to enjoy retirement together, then you've got to start looking at it as one pot, quite frankly. That's my view. It's quite a long answer, but
oh, it's great. It's really helpful. I am conscious of time. If anyone has to leave us, then thank you very much for joining us. There's a couple of questions which I think we should try and get to just very quickly, just because people have been waiting so patiently. But this is also being recorded, so if you do have to leave, you can come back and find out what those answers were. But we're just going to take a couple more minutes just to answer just two quick ones, if that's okay. Kiarna, I'm going to come to you. What's been your favourite travel destination?
Gosh, that's the hardest question of all.
So many.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's anywhere where the people are just so welcoming and where you can see the positive impact of travel on the community, because it's obviously really important to think about how people are traveling. It's not just let's go and, put our footprint on the world. Let's do it in a way that really is beneficial for the world as well. So where I've seen that recently, I was lucky to go with my sister to do the Everest Base Camp track at New Year's. And firstly, spending time with my sister, who, I live in Germany, she's in London, we're lucky we do see each other relatively often, but putting that special time together with another loved one is really special, as well as the impact that you kind of positive impact hopefully we have on the place and the people. So yeah, that would be my one of the top ones. Otherwise I'll be here forever.
And then this question is a bit more practical. I'm going to give it to you, Ruth, if that's okay. I mean, I probably can answer it as well, but I think it's best that you answer it. And we see a lot of providers around, such as Nest, PensionBee, etc. How can we decide on the right provider? Does it make a difference?
Well, I think very often if people are in a workplace pension, that decision has been made for them. And I think most of the workplace pensions offer good value and offer reasonable fund choices. And they also mean that you will end up getting your employer's contributions. So do join it, otherwise you're giving up money. I think if for whatever reason you would like something over and above that, I think the way to make decisions is very much by being very clear around what the costs are looking like and what it is you're looking to achieve by having your own pension. If you're self-employed, that could certainly be the type of question that does come up for you. So I think it's a matter, there's lots of really useful websites that can help you with that. One that immediately comes to mind, which is also run by a woman, mainly for women, is called Boring Money. And the lovely Holly Mackay, and they provide lots of best buy panels for all sorts of different financial products, but pensions is a big feature on there. So I think that's a great place to start, and you can ask questions.
Right, I'm glad you gave Boring Money a plug. I used to work for Boring Money, that's why. And just quickly, because Tina's put in so much great stuff in here. Sorry, Tina, I couldn't get to all of it because a lot of it was her comments because she's worked in the DC world. But she was saying we're in a DC world now, and kind of just to get to this point, because you did mention it, Ruth. So we have to fund our own pensions. How much should we be setting aside in our DC pension schemes to feel secure in this day and age? Is 10% even enough? I don't know if there's a quick answer.
Probably not.
No.
It probably isn't. I mean, I always think it is 10% is a great starting point. But what I would always recommend for anybody at any, well, particularly if you're starting at a younger age, if you start at 10%, try to get the discipline of nudging yourself up by, not by what your salary's gone up by, so it's another 10% of whatever that salary increase is, but go up a percentage. Nudge yourself to go from 10 to 11 to 12 to 13 to 14. If you do it in those bite-sized chunks, it's not as painful. And I think there's really a thing around being mindful of expenditure creep. So typically as we go through our working lives, we hopefully will start to earn more money. Now you have a choice. We all have a choice. Do you then live up to that increased expenditure? And so nothing's actually changed? Or do you think, okay, I'm earning a little bit more. I'm going to use some of this to actually invest into my future and put it straight into your pension. And I think if anybody's in an environment where you get bonuses, a great way to think of a bonus is half of me today, half of me for the future, whatever that might be. So I think it's really having that discipline. But 10% is unlikely to be enough. I think it probably needs to be closer to 15% plus, depending on the type of lifestyle that you would like to fund, of course.
Yeah, so back to those vision boards. If I want my 2 houses and my wild swimming and my yoga, it definitely needs to be.
You've got to go for it. You've got to go for it, Carmel, I think. Yeah.
My therapist. It's fine. It's all this kind of stuff that we have to think about, doesn't it? Okay, I am going to wrap it up there. There was a question that I had at the end, and I don't know if you guys can just say it really quickly. That was like a good book or podcast recommendation. If you can't, we can put it in the email and send it out to people. I'm not going to say mine because I think it might be the same as Ruth. So I'm going to start with Ruth, and just, it could be a podcast, could be a documentary, could be something just to send people to after if they want to start working on this a little bit more.
So
Ruth,
I may not say the one that you think I'm going to say.
Okay.
So there you go. Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. It's a bit male oriented. It's a bit bro at times, but the principles around dying with zero, I think, are super interesting to think about. So it is about accumulating enough, but equally knowing when is the right time to spend money. There's no point being the wealthiest person in the graveyard.
God, Food for thought. And Kiarna, from you?
I think I've got a long list, but I'll recommend the podcast, which is the Condé Nast Traveller one, and only because they have really like fun guests on there and they share their kind of experiences and inspiration. So if you're looking for more of an inspiration travel podcast, then that's a good one to listen when you're getting ready in the morning.
Thank you. And Rebecca?
Oh, you can't limit me to one. So I've already mentioned Noon and Modern Elders Academies as communities, but there's a very good book, The 100-Year Life by Professors Linda Grattan and Andrew Scott, which I think is very worth a read. How Will You Measure Your Life? Clayton Christensen. It was a commencement speech, I think, at Harvard. And then one, I hope, this isn't too negative, but The 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware, which is a really good one as well. And I could go on, but those are probably my top 3.
Yeah, that's a wonderful, wonderful book. The book I thought that Ruth was going to say, because Ruth has a wonderful Substack called is 10,000 Weeks. Yeah.
No, 1,000.
1,000 weeks. Sorry, in my numbers are jumbling up in the head because I'm like, the book I really like and is 40,000 weeks.
No, 4,000.
4,000 weeks. God, I'm thinking of really long lives. So here you go. You can tell it's 8 o'clock at night, can't you? 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman, which he talks about. That's how much time most of us on average have on Earth. And when you start to think about that, you really start to make choices about what you're doing with your time. And Ruth is doing the Substack about her part of that, how she's approaching those last weeks. That sounds very awful, doesn't it? But you're in a really positive way. So that would be my recommendation, and we'll send them all out to you. I'm going to wrap it up there. We're 10 minutes over, but I hope it was worth it for everyone. I know that I learned so much from that, and I just really want to thank our panelists and of course Paradigm Norton. You can watch this back if it all got a little bit overwhelming, as sometimes these things do, and then also the other webinars in the series will also be on the Paradigm Norton YouTube page, and we will send you out details of how you can get in touch with all of our panelists if you want to work with any of them or follow anything that they do. Thank you again. Have a good evening, everybody, and take care of yourselves.
Thank you.